And it will help restore protection that has decreased since previous vaccinations. People age 5 and older are now recommended to get an updated bivalent booster dose at least 2 months after their last COVID-19 shot. That means the bivalent booster may be given after a person's primary series or after their last booster shot, regardless of what brand you received before. Even if you've already had COVID-19, you should get vaccinated. Right now, at the Native American Community Clinic, you can get COVID-19 vaccines, including updated boosters, at the same visit as other vaccines. However, if you've received a recent monkeypox vaccine, you may need to wait 4 weeks before you can get a COVID-19 vaccine, and you should discuss this with your provider. Schedule your vaccination appointment with the Native American Community Clinic by calling 612-872-8086.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Hey Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in 4 directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy, but with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for rain tonight with a low around 59, Thursday rain with a temp falling to 38, and Friday cloudy with a high around 32. Vinaigrette is locally owned and has been offering the finest olive oils and vinegars since 2009. At the store, you can taste a wide variety of oils and vinegars, and if you find something you like, they'll bottle it for you right on the spot. Vinaigrette is located off 50th and Xerxes in Minneapolis or at vinaigrettemn.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be Indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake. Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in 4 directions. This is Robert Pilot in Washington, D.C., and you're listening to Native Roots Radio, and we discuss local and national Native news and events. And I want to just say that this portion of Native Roots Radio is brought to you by Little Moments Count.
Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focused on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of life. For more information, you can visit littlemomentscount.org.
Ogama, I'm here in Washington, D.C., and ICWA was going on today, and we're really happy to have our guest on. And I do believe, Patrice, are you there?
Sure.
Awesome. Let's have Ogama. Will you introduce her?
Yes. Welcome, Attorney Patrice Kunesh. Patrice works with the Native American Rights Fund and works through her advocacy firm called Pihin Haha Consulting. She's also been nominated to be the Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans in the Department of Health and Human Services. She's currently awaiting confirmation, and she attended the oral arguments today at the U.S. Supreme Court in Brackeen versus Haaland, also known as the ICWA case, and it's challenging whether or not ICWA is constitutional. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, really happy to be here. It's been a long day, so
I was up at 4:30, getting ready to get out there and stand in line at 5 o'clock so I could be guaranteed a seat in the Supreme Court for these oral arguments.
Well, it was really, really cool seeing you this afternoon walk down those stairs of justice and seeing a familiar face. First of all, we have a lot of people that probably do not know what ICWA is that are listening to us. Do you mind just giving a quick overview of why we were all there and why you were there and what's at stake and what's going on?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. ICWA stands for the Indian Child Welfare Act, and it was adopted in 1978 by the entire Congress, who really emphatically wanted to address the issue, the concern, the tragedy of the wholesale removal of Native children from their tribes, from their families. And this wasn't one or two children, it was 20%, 30% of Native children were being placed outside of their homes, outside of their families, outside of the tribal community. And it became just a definite threat to the preservation of the tribe itself and cultural community integrity. And the issue before the court, and this is not certainly a new issue for the court, but this one really challenged on its face the entire constitutionality of the Indian Child Welfare Act. And when I say that Congress adopted the law in 1978, it was really part of a suite of laws, including the Indian Civil Rights Act, to really redress and reform a lot of heavy-duty bureaucracy and addressing the state's overreach in terms of looking at Native families and Native children and deciding and defining in their own ways what is a proper home life. And many of these removals were based on poverty conditions on many reservations and struggling families to make ends meet. And state social workers, just very unfamiliar with tribes and tribal ways of life, just found these to be wholly unacceptable. So we have decades and decades of Indian children being removed for a number of different reasons. We've heard a lot recently about boarding schools, right? Well, there's a whole concerted effort to remove Indian children from their families in different ways. So the plaintiffs, state of Texas, the Attorney General from Texas, and private adoptive families were challenging the Indian Child Welfare Act, saying Congress could not make that law. And they're saying that Congress can't make that law for a couple reasons. One is that it interferes with the state's authority over family relations, and that's called the anti-commandeering challenge. And then they're also saying that the placement preferences within the Indian Child Welfare Act and its regulations are race-based. They're also saying, well, wait a minute, even if Congress can make this law, it's done so impermissibly and violates other provisions of the Constitution. So we have a number of particular challenges to the Indian Child Welfare Act under the Constitution, and it really raises the specter of the federal government's relationship with Native nations and their citizens. So that's the case in the nutshell. I'm involved in it because of my work with the Native American Rights Fund, with KC Family Programs, and other Native child welfare organizations like the Minneapolis Indian Child Welfare Law Center. There's been a huge outpouring of support in favor of the Indian Child Welfare Act. NARF itself had 492 tribes and Native-led organizations sign on to its amicus brief. There's incredibly strong support for the Indian Child Welfare Act among states as well. But we do have the state of Texas and some other sort of think tanks, I'm not sure what to call them, that are challenging the tribe's right to define the placement preference of Native children in foster care and adoptive placement situations.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. And one of the things I think they're not clear, and I wonder if you could help clear up here in a minute or so. We're a sovereign nations. How can a state's authority oversee that?
Well, I think that's sort of the heart of the matter, Robert, and it's what we call the Article 1 challenge, because it's the powers of Congress. And what plaintiffs are saying is that Congress doesn't have the authority to enact this kind of law. It only has powers to do really limited things and things that don't interfere with the state's authority. And they're also saying that even if Congress has this power, which we call, in Indian law context, we call it the plenary power authority of Congress to enact laws and fulfill its trust responsibility to Native nations. They're saying that the manner of exercising this power is impermissible, and that it's really sort of a states' rights challenge to the law in itself, because ICWA requires that the state provides active efforts to reunite the Native child with its family. And those efforts, can have a whole range, but it does impose a duty on the state. And Texas is saying, and the private plaintiffs are saying, that this is an undue burden. And this undue burden is also unconstitutional.
Wow. We should take a quick break here, and we'll come back with Patrice Kunesh. Thank you so much for stopping in. This is information that we need our relatives know out there. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
I heard sex trafficking happens a lot in Indian country. What is that?
Here are some of the real reasons why sex trafficking happens in Indian country. Unequal gender roles that were forced on us by colonization. Communities don't have enough resources. Silence around domestic and sexual violence. Lack of attention and justice for missing and murdered Indigenous people. There's a lot of behavior that keeps our communities out of balance. These are just a few true reasons why Native communities are targeted by traffickers. When these acts of violence happen in our communities, it opens us all up for exploitation.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hey, Ogama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Hi, this is Robert Pilot here telling you about Minnesota Native American art. Did you know that Twin Cities is known for Native art? Well, if you're not familiar, then check out All My Relations Arts. It's a program that seeks to increase the visibility and value of these incredibly talented American Indian artists in all forms of art while honoring the history and the presence of Indigenous cultures. And right now, All My Relations Arts is showcasing Rosie Seamus' dance, She Who Lives on the Road to War. This is an immersive installation dance performance created by Rosie Seamus in response to global loss and the collective need to come together in peace and reconciliation. She Who Lives on the Road to War is a place for visitors to rest, grieve, console, and meditate. Performances will take place through mid-December. Find the performance schedule at allmyrelationsarts.com. I love all the Indigenous art here in the Twin Cities, and I hope you can enjoy it too. allmyrelationsarts.com.
Bijou, I am Oshawashko Gijig. I'm from Red Lake Nation, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake.
Hey, this portion of the show is brought to you by MNsure. Just wanted to let everybody know that I needed health coverage that I could count on and afford, and MNsure helped me find a plan that worked for me, and they helped me save me money. Health insurance that fit my budget, and I was covered. It was awesome. Did you know that most Minnesotans qualify for savings through MNsure, and they have free experts who can help you sign up for coverage? You can go to MNsure.org and get started to get covered today. And I have one more announcement, Robert. The St. Paul Public Schools American Indian Education Program and the Interfaith Action Department of Indian Work is having a powwow at Humboldt High School on Friday, November 11th from 6 to 8 p.m. That's Humboldt High School at 30 Baker Street East in St. Paul. They'll have a $50 gift card incentive for Pfizer and bivalent booster shots for ages 6 months and up, free flu shots, and children under 11 must be accompanied by an adult. As a reminder, this is a drug and alcohol-free event, and security will be present to keep everybody safe, but make sure you turn out for the November powwow for the Department of Indian Work and St. Paul Public Schools.
You know, I'm going to make that after the show, Ogama, because that's my old stomping ground, St. Paul Public Schools, being an old, well, not old, but retired teacher. I guess I am old. Hey, we have Patrice Kunesh, who is here with the hearings on ICWA here in Washington, D.C., and I know she's super tired like I am. I had to fly. I had to get to the airport by 6 and fly out here for this special occasion, but Ogama, you have a question. Why don't we start out with you with your question?
Yeah, I just want to remind listeners that we're here with Patrice Kunesh, who's currently waiting to be confirmed as the Commissioner of the Administration for Native Americans in the Department of Health and Human Services. And she's worked with the Native American Rights Fund and also has an advocacy firm. She's an attorney. And she was in person today at the U.S. Supreme Court for the oral arguments in Brackeen versus Haaland, which is also known as the case that's challenging ICWA, or the Indian Child Welfare Act. Patrice, what is the energy that was happening in that courtroom today?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I can tell you that I, along with other lawyers who are supporting ICWA, we were very tensed, very nervous about what kind of questions we would hear, and what sort of signals we might get from the court. Behind us, I'm a member of the Supreme Court. Behind us were the parties to the case, and then we had the general public. And I think there just was a palpable tension in the court because we feel, so much is at stake. But what we heard from the court was very engaged arguments. I should say questions to the attorneys. There were 4 attorneys, 2 representing Texas, one representing the Brackeens, one representing the state of Texas, and then 2 on behalf of the Native defendants, the Native families and such. And the court, every justice in the Supreme Court asked questions. And I got to see the newest justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, asking really good questions. And she clearly understood the Indian Child Welfare Act. This was her first case involving Indian law on the bench. And she asked really strong questions about why is this case before the court? Is there any standing? Like, do these plaintiffs even have a right to be before the court? And then the other justices, 4 were very engaged and obviously had a strong command of Indian law. Justice Gorsuch, who's from Colorado, very much grew up in his legal career doing Indian law and understanding tribal sovereignty. But we have other justices who don't see or understand the role of tribes, even though they're part of the Constitution. They even predate the U.S. government as part of the government-to-government relationship, really challenging in their questions sort of the scope of ICWA. Why do we have these placement preferences, and how does this work? And they did not seem to have a strong command of how the act applied, in effect to Native people in tribal courts or in state courts, and how tribes, really exercise their sovereignty. So I felt that the conversation, this was the longest conversation, I should say, the argument that I've ever been to. It was scheduled for 90 minutes. It went to 3 hours and 15 minutes. And so the court was clearly engaged and involved in this case, and really struggling to figure out, amongst the 7 different issues that they granted cert on, how to figure this case out. So it's going to be it's going to be a very complex case to decide, and a decision that I'm cautiously optimistic is going to uphold the Indian Child Welfare Act on its constitutional basis, because no court has ever found it unconstitutional. It might narrow some of the placement preferences, but we're hoping it's going to take a look at it preliminarily on the procedural grounds of standing. Our argument is that the plaintiffs do not have standing. They do not have the legal right, to bring this case before the court. They don't have a legal issue or, damages to remedy in this case. One of the things that we also, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cut in. It's disappointing to hear that so many people don't understand why this is important, and how it really acts in effect. I mean, we're talking about people at the highest level of legal government in the United States, and they really don't seem to have a grasp on this. And that's a little disappointing to hear, but I'm sorry I interjected. Go ahead and continue.
Oh, well, Indian law is rather complex. We have a whole entire federal title of federal statutes, Title 25, dedicated to the course of dealings between the federal government and tribes. But it's still a rather unique or specialized area of law. And I got into it because of my family heritage and knowing that tribal sovereignty, tribal rights, and Native children, absolutely do have the right for this cultural connection and heritage. The court doesn't get many of these cases, and when they do, they bring up questions that are rather unique. Most people think of the United States as two sovereigns, the federal government and the state government. And last night, during the elections, we saw that in action. Well, in fact, there's a third sovereign. We have the tribal governments, sovereign governments that have a government-to-government, a political relationship with the federal government. And these cases, often are problematic for courts because they don't understand the nature of tribal sovereignty, that they are a third sovereign in our federal government system, separate and unique from state governments for sure, and that the federal government has, over 250 years of a course of dealings with tribal nations. So a lot of that is sort of context building and bringing up historical records, from 250 years ago. And certainly the Constitution speaks to the sovereign status of tribes. And so our job is not just to look at it from a legal perspective, but to bring in that history, that relevance of this course of dealing, and bring it to the modern day of how tribes interact and express that sovereignty through tribal court systems and prioritizing child welfare as part of their tribal sovereignty.
Patrice, I just have a quick question here. Now, we talk about race-based, but we're not race-based, are we?
You're right, Robert. And that was something that was very troubling to the court. And they asked this question in a couple of different ways. And we know that the tribe has a government-to-government relationship with the federal government. And that relationship is a political basis. Because it's a nation-to-nation relationship. And the tribe's relationship to its members is citizenship. And that's a political relationship as well. So there is a depth of authority defining this relationship as a political relationship. But because the Indian Child Welfare Act talks about placement preferences with Native families and extended family of Native families, kind of this kinship care, they're looking at this as, or the challenge is that this is race-based, that because it's a Native child, in certain circumstances, we're seeing this as applied in a racial context. And we had excellent legal representation emphasizing over and over again that this is a political relationship. And the laws, statutes, treaties, are all based on that government-to-government relationship. I think the default that we've all seen is sort of race-based, and that's just not the case here.
Exactly. Hey, Patrice, thank you so much for stopping in. I know you're tired, and we got another guest coming up, but we're going to catch up with you again soon. Peeny Gigi.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Ogama. Nice to be with you tonight.
Miigwech. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac, the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me, Wen. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
When we heal from our traumas,
When we face our fears,
let go of our addictions,
when we relearn our values,
when we live our teachings,
respecting our elders,
cherishing and honoring our children,
when we honor and take care of our spirit,
there will be no room left for sexual violence.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
As we head towards colder weather, it's important to make sure you're up to date on vaccinations and protected from COVID-19. The Native American Community Clinic is now administering the updated Pfizer bivalent booster. The updated bivalent booster helps protect against the original COVID-19 strain and against newer Omicron variants. And it will help restore protection that has decreased since previous vaccinations. People age 5 and older are now recommended to get an updated bivalent booster dose at least 2 months after their last COVID-19 shot. That means the bivalent booster may be given after a person's primary series or after their last booster shot, regardless of what brand you received before. Even if you've already had COVID-19, you should get vaccinated. Right now, at the Native American Community Clinic, you can get COVID-19 vaccines, including updated boosters, at the same visit as other vaccines. However, if you've received a recent monkeypox vaccine, you may need to wait 4 weeks before you can get a COVID-19 vaccine, and you should discuss this with your provider. Schedule your vaccination appointment with the Native American Community Clinic by calling 612-872-8086.
Health insurance that fits my budget? I'm covered. I needed health coverage I could count on and afford. MNsure helped me find a plan that works for me, and they helped me save money. Did you know that most Minnesotans qualify for savings through MNsure? And they have free experts who can help you sign up for coverage. Go to MNsure.org today and get started and get covered. That's MNsure.org. MNsure.org.
Hi, I'm Claire Ferreira, president and owner of Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. My grandfather started Standard over 90 years ago, and we've been a family-owned company ever since, serving over 500,000 of our fellow Minnesotans. I'm proud to be the 4th generation of my family working in our business. And when we say we treat our employees and clients like family, we truly mean it. See how we can help your family stay comfortable all year long at standardheating.com. That's standardheating.com.
Standard Heating and Air Conditioning wants to remind you that winter is coming soon. Now is the best time to replace your furnace before we get that first sub-zero cold snap. Get a quote today by calling 612-824-2656 or visit standardheating.com. Plus, Standard Heating is hiring. Are you an HVAC technician with experience under your belt? Are you looking to improve your work-life balance, receive excellent benefits, 401k match, and even tuition reimbursement? Well, Standard Heating and Air Conditioning is looking for you. Learn more and apply today at standardheating.com/careers. With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for rain tonight with a low around 59, Thursday rain with a temp falling to 38, and Friday cloudy with a high around 32.
Black Friday starts early at Warner Selling Appliance with deals you can't find anywhere else, like free dishwasher installation on brands like KitchenAid, an exclusive 5% savings, plus a Black Friday bonus of up to $800 on packages from select brands. Shop now at warnerselling.com.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Hey, this portion of Native Roots Radio is brought to you by Little Moments Count.
Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focused on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of life. Nearly 80% of brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days, and small moments of interaction like talking, playing, reading, and singing really help create the pathways that build a child's brain during the early stages of life. For more information, you can visit littlemomentscount.org. Native Roots Radio is really excited to be partnered with Little Moments Count to host these conversations focused on early childhood development. We've been welcoming monthly guests to talk about how they view the role of early childhood development and bright futures and strong communities for Native people throughout Minnesota. And we're excited to have them back, and we'll have them again in the future as well. Welcome back, Barb.
Hey, there they are. Hey, I just want to say Native Roots Radio is all over Civic Media Network all over, and I'm in Washington, D.C. supporting ICWA, so the timing of this show is awesome. And I want to just jump right into the questions, you guys. Do you mind? Can I get Lucy? Can you tell me about the professional development initiative that you and Indigenous Vision are working on?
Sure.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
I wouldn't say me personally. I currently work for the Department of Ed and in the Early Learning Services Division at the state of Minnesota. I'm a longtime early childhood professional. I've been a teacher, director. I've led professional development. And in my role at MDE, I really started to think critically. What sort of opportunities are available for our American Indian teachers or teachers who serve primarily American Indian children? And I thought, I was in a position and had some funding. And so I reached out to Indigenous Visioning and see if they would partner with me to learn from our early childhood professionals in the community. And that's what we did. We reached out to the community and we asked them what's important to them. What would they like to learn more about? What knowledge do they hold? And filling the gap of the professional development needed by our teachers today.
Well, that's exciting. Hey, Barb, welcome back. Great to see you as always. I want to ask you a quick question, and then you can take it from there. Barb, what is Indigenous Visioning's role in this initiative, and how does this align with Little Moments Count's work?
Oh, Barb, it looks like you might be on mute. You're not on mute, but it looks like maybe your microphone isn't connected. So maybe if we just dial back just a little bit here. We're here with Lucy Littlewolf. Is it Arias? Is that how you say your last name, Lucy?
Arias.
Arias. Thank you. I can't roll my R, so I'm sorry about that.
I'm still figuring it out too. I've been in Minnesota too long, to be honest.
Lucy is Ojibwe, Blackfeet, and Latina mother of 3 children by birth and kinship adoption. And as she said, she's the early language and literacy specialist. And prior to that was working with preschool development grants for tribal nations at the Minnesota Department of Education. And we're really excited to have her here to talk about the Indigenous Professional Development for Early Childhood Educators. And in 2022, the Indigenous Visioning, who we have Barb Fabre on for,
Yes.
conducted this survey of Indigenous early childhood professionals throughout Minnesota. So that's what we're talking about today. And it sounds like we have Barb back. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, it's good to hear your voice. Welcome back, Barb.
Yeah, Barb Fabre, CEO of Indigenous Visioning. And back to Robert's question. So when Lucy reached out to us, we had a great conversation about what's important in tribal early childhood settings, or just about any kind of early childhood settings where Indigenous children could be. And so, like Lucy said, we surveyed teachers throughout the state of Minnesota, the tribal early childhood teachers in all the tribal programs. And we had a great response. And many of them felt that the culture was important, and finding out, native language and literacy, Indigenous outdoor learning environments, Indigenous food and nutrition, social emotional support for children. So those are just some of the top ones. And so Lucy asked us to do, to implement, do the survey, and find cultural trainers to help put on those trainings. So the survey responses was really interesting. And, the research is out there. I mean, it tells us that, the inclusion of children's Indigenous cultural practices can help contextualize academic concepts within the children's positive self-esteem. We all know that, but now we have research that backs us up.
Wow, you do. And, I know this, and I think you know this, but can you tell our audience why this is important work?
Lucy, do you want to try that one?
It's who we are, right? We're all born with our gifts, and we're all born with a path. And as Indigenous people, it's important that our teachers can be our knowledge holders and share that with us. So, it can be a complicated answer or very simple. It's who we are, and we deserve to have the opportunity to learn more and how it looks and how it feels and what it means.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Barb.
And Robert, some of the other research that we looked at, it's, when you offer culture and language in a classroom with children, it's a strong support to reverse historical trauma. It helps develop them a strong cultural identity. They learn cultural teachings, prevent culture loss for the entire community. So it can be a feeder program to get back the culture and the language in our communities and our families.
That's super important. What you did a survey? What else were the results in this survey, or did we cover a lot of it?
Well, in the response was overwhelming, and they talked about. We asked them if they were, had a range of knowledge about Indigenous cultures and traditions. 24% of them felt that 24% of them felt they had a low cultural knowledge, and 53% felt they were intermediate, and only 22 felt that they were very knowledgeable in the culture and tradition. So, we want to level the playing field, and we want to get more, we're always looking for more cultural teachers and elders to share and in the classroom. And so, the survey was for Indigenous teachers, and the training is going to be created by them and by elders and cultural teachers. So we're always looking for some, those. And so if anybody is interested, make sure you get a hold of us. Our website is www.indigenousvisioning.com. And majority of the respondents wanted additional training around well-being. They wanted early childhood models from an Indigenous lens. They wanted to learn about Indigenous concepts, principles, and practices. So, there's such a need out there. And, I was so excited when Lucy contacted us about this, because this is something we've been talking about for a long time at Indigenous Visioning. So Lucy made it happen.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for you. And, we as tribal nations across the nation should be helping. What can the tribes promote culture within the classroom? How can our tribes do it, and how are you working with that? I don't know if Lucy wants to answer that, or if you do, Barb.
I can start, and then Lucy, if you want to add to it. So the professionals that responded, they talked, 80% of them wanted the training in person. We not only asked them what they wanted to learn, but, how they wanted to receive that training. Especially in a world of virtual training is so, everything's virtual these days because of the pandemic, but 80% of them said in person, 51% at a conference, 44% online, said an online group, and 31 says on an individual basis. So nearly 40% of all those surveys also said that they do not receive culturally relevant training right now. So we hope to change those statistics.
Yeah, we got about a minute left in the segment. Lucy, you have anything to add? And I'll just add that I know when relatives that haven't been around and are just coming around for the first time, and they hear the drum, how significant that is and how they feel it. And that's what you guys are talking about.
Exactly. One thing I would tell programs and, our tribes is to really think outside of the classroom. We didn't learn in the confines of a box. And so really thinking of what are our strengths or what are our assets in our community, and that's our natural world, our elders, right? And really asserting, the role of parents as being the first and most important teacher in a child's life.
Wow, that's a great way to end this segment. Hey, we are here doing our monthly check-in with Little Moments Count. We're here with Barb and Lucy, and we're going to come back and wrap up the show with a couple more questions. And one thing Lori has asked on Facebook is, and we'll get to this when we come back, is this or will this be published? So that's a really great question. And you're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and we'll be right back after this short break. Please stay with us.
Hey, Olgama, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
J&S Bean Factory is a native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
Health insurance that fits my budget? I'm covered. I needed health coverage I could count on and afford. MNsure helped me find a plan that works for me, and they helped me save money. Did you know that most Minnesotans qualify for savings through MNsure? And they have free experts who can help you sign up for coverage. Go to mnsure.org today and get started and get covered. That's mnsure.org. mnsure.org.
This is Leonard Peltier. I am in Coleman 1 U.S. Penitentiary, and I'm listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
Go ahead, Robert.
No, you got it. You got it.
Are we doing? You do it, Robert. You do it. You lead me on that one.
Oh, well, let's do a couple of them then. This portion of Native Roots Radio is brought to you by Little Moments Count. And I think the other one is our standard fourth segment one, Ogama.
Yes. So this portion of the show is also brought to you by Howling for Wolves,
Protecting wolves.
Protecting wolves for future generations.
Well, this is a live show, Ogama. Oh,
I know. I know. It's not Monday, is it? The ICWA case has me a little stressed, everybody. So thanks for your patience. But we're really happy to be back with Little Moments Count.
Right on, right on. Hey, so let's jump in. We only got a few more minutes here. Barb, I want to ask just a quick thing that Lori asked, that's listening to this is, will this be published or is it published out there anywhere?
Yeah, it's not published at this time, and I am not sure. That's a Lucy question. It'll be her document when we're complete. Lucy?
Yeah, it'll be. I know Barb and them are wrapping up, and they have, they want to do some feedback again, gather some more feedback from teachers. But yeah, it'll be published. It'll probably be published on Indigenous Visioning's website, MDE's website. So yeah, it'll be out there. But I'm sure, I think it's in a good shape. If anybody's interested, I think Barb could share it. I could share it. So.
Definitely. And Barb, maybe give your email, or not email, but your website address again.
Yes, it's Indigenous Visioning, one word, .com. Pretty easy. And earlier you asked me how this relates to and aligns with Little Moments Counts, and it aligns perfectly. And Little Moments Count is all about the more you talk and play and read and sing to your child every day, the smarter their brain becomes, they're little sponges. Well, it's the same thing with the culture and the language. And so we're so grateful for Little Moments Count for supporting this, and the state of Minnesota Department of Education, because this is important work. And this is just the start of it, I believe. And we know there's a need for it, a demand for it. And so, please, again, if you're a cultural trainer, or you have something that you feel that, early childhood educators, could learn from, please contact us. We're anxious to talk to you.
Barb and Lucy, this really fits into what I'm doing here out in Washington, D.C., and why it's so important that our little ones stay in the family to get this. And I know me personally, we have a couple generations that are lost in our way, and we're coming back, but we don't want more generations being lost, Barb.
No, we don't. No, we don't. And my heart and prayers go out to you all in D.C. and miigwech for the fight, and just know that we are here and praying for everybody.
Right, and it just really fits into your work, so it's just makes so much sense that we need to really teach our little ones our ways, because they are our ways. And again, I talked about a little earlier how I see family members, how the drum affects them, how language affects them inside. Lucy, I mean, have you seen that too in your work?
Oh, definitely. And even with myself, I was blessed to work alongside a first language speaker years ago. And, the very direct teaching she gave me and the indirect teachings I still carry to this day. So definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Barb, we've covered a lot of stuff. I'm wondering if there's anything that you want to bring up here in this last few minutes.
Well, I would just say that, culture in the classroom is it just makes sense, because, most of our Indigenous children are being taught through a westernized curriculum. And sometimes it's adapted to tribal classrooms, but for the most part, it's a westernized curriculum. So we've been working and talking about creating that curriculum, because we know it can be indigenized. Just about anything can be indigenized, the curriculum. But why, when we should be providing those direct lessons and teachings like Lucy was talking about? That's how our children learn. That's how we learn. And you're right, Robert, we got 2 generations to make up here, to bring our culture and our language back and reverse adverse childhood experiences and replace them with positive childhood experiences.
Well, yeah, and it's a great point. And I'm glad we're talking this way, because it's so important. I've seen so many of our Native kids in the years of teaching that have been lost until somebody has reached out, and told them it's not a race, and told them that it's okay to be where you're at. And because we understand our people, and especially you guys understand the young ones, and especially the ones that went away, and the parents are learning too, and at the same time. So Barb, it's just a wonderful thing.
Thank you, Miigwech. And that's why we created Indigibox. And I know we've talked on this show about that, but it's the same concept. We're trying to get more culture and language and things that are familiar with our kids, things from home that they're familiar with. And absolutely, the case that you're listening to out in Washington, D.C., it's critical. And just imagine, all the children that aren't in their tribal communities, they're not getting any of this. And so we need to keep them in our communities.
Exactly. And we know that when people come back to us in an older age, that it has really affected them, and they don't know why they feel left out until they come back.
Mm-hmm. Well, the education achievement gap, and we have all those statistics, bad statistics that show us, why we are, the achievement gap. We have low graduation rates and high dropout rates and health issues. That is all from that historical trauma. And the more we can share with our kids this rich culture and language, the better they're going to be as adults.
Exactly. Hey, we got about a minute left. Lucy, do you have anything to comment on? I know maybe how your curriculum is morphing into more, or how you came about it. It's just really exciting to hear educators really jumping into this and knowing our kids and how kids learn, and so it's just exciting, Lucy.
Well, it's interesting. Little kids know so much when they're little bitty babies. Just because they can't tell us what they know, we assume they don't know a lot, but that's not true. And they know way more than they are to communicate, and that progresses with them, right? When one day when it's time to learn to read, little kids know way more than the simple books that are put in their hands. So it's our job as the adults and the educators to fill them up with all the good knowledge in the world, right? Let it be our cultural ways, our language, or even the science of nature, right? To fill them up with those things, because one day when they pick up a book and that knowledge is there, they're already gonna know it, and they're just
Wow.
gonna build upon it.
Great way to end it. Thanks, Barb. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Olgamon. I want to thank Mary Kunesh's sister, Patrice Kunesh, coming in. And, of course, we want to say Peeny Gigi, thank you to Little Moments Count for what they do for our community. We'll be back tomorrow. You're listening to Native Roots Radio Presents I'm Awake.
Located just north of 50th and France, the Great Wall Restaurant